Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. When you have a mission in life, when you feel like there's something you're here to do, something you want to create, you know it's important to act with confidence. But that's also sometimes elusive. And it seems more so or more elusive when you're stepping onto that road that is less traveled. And when you're here to do something that you feel is a mission, it's often that sense of, I need to speak about this, I need to create a business around this, I need to share about this. And yet, because it is the road less traveled, it's also where self-doubt can creep in. And that undermines your efforts, doesn't it? And even your belief in yourself. So think about this. What does it mean to feel truly confident? That's not bravado. So how could becoming more confident, being bold in your conversations, as my guest today likes to say, that are aligned with who you really are? Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, and I am Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the Quantum Connection Process. Head to the Baca Institute to discover your quantum connection with your inner guidance system, which is really Source, by taking the Quantum Connection quiz. We're each designed to connect with Source in our own unique way. That means we're all doing that in a different fashion. And knowing your own style doesn't mean you don't have aspects that are the other styles too, but knowing what's predominant for you really helps to smooth your own way of connecting with that universal quantum field that holds all potential. And so that's where you really begin to connect with your inner guidance at a deeper level than you ever thought was possible. And that, my friends, is the secret to having and creating what you truly want in your life. So my guest today is Yvonne E.L. Silver. She is a confidence catalyst, executive coach, and CEO of Women and Wisdom Media. She passionately serves women entrepreneurs seeking to flourish. And that doesn't mean, I just want to interrupt what I'm saying about Yvonne to say, it doesn't mean that if you're a man and you're listening to this, you're going to get a lot out of it, my friends. Believe me. Because Yvonne is a sought-after speaker, bestselling author, and coach mentor, an expert in confident conversations and increasing sales velocity. She draws on 30 years of business success with 8 startups and working in 4 different countries. Her Women and Wisdom radio show has aired bi-weekly on BBS Radio for the past 4 years. Welcome, Yvonne. I am so delighted to see you. I just have a feeling we're going to have great fun. I didn't mention that we've known each other for several years. We've both been part of the Evolutionary Business Council, and that's how I know you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an organization where leaders who are making big changes and big impact in the world get to connect. So it was lovely to meet you and have breakfast with you a few years ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while, and we know that COVID got in the way of some things too, but here we are, and I'm delighted to welcome you here. And I want to start with why you? In other words, why are you the one that has felt so moved? This has been, I think, your mission in life, or at least one of them. Why is that the case? And what has led you personally to want to do this kind of work?
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned my book, Words, Women and Wisdom, The Modern Art of Confident Conversations. Yes, it was written for women, although I've spoken about it at numerous events where there have been mixed audiences. And our words make a difference. So we can always use different language, different terminology. I'm passionate about this, Laurie, because growing up in London, England, you can tell from my accent, I wasn't born in North America. I'm in Canada now, today in Toronto, but normally in Calgary at the base of the Rocky Mountains. And grew up in England with a dad who had PTSD. He came back from World War II. He got a bullet in Dunkirk, and he became a very angry man. He just did not get treated. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of men came back from the war that did not get treated. And that showed up with him being very impatient, very angry, and he was constantly criticizing my mom. And I watched him literally drain the dignity, with his words, drain the dignity right out of her until she became this empty shell of the person that she had once been. She'd been a professional businesswoman who had her own income, had her own life. And when she met my dad, all of that stopped and she became a stay-at-home mom. And she lost her power, she lost her income, and eventually she taught him how to drive, and he even took the car keys and wouldn't let her drive the car. So he literally took away her freedom. And I swore growing up I was never going to be that person. And I decided many years later that I did want to write a book, and that the words for the book came through, they just flowed through me. It was like a download every morning. And I dedicated that book to my mom as my first, what I call unmentor, because she showed me what not to do. And it focuses on all different types of language. There's 40 different words and word concepts in the book that we can either start saying more of, stop saying, stop using in everyday language, in the workplace, and even a chapter when no words are required. So how do we use the power of silence?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's where my passion, my spark comes from, because I had some of that same impact that my dad had on my mom. I had some of that when I went into high school. And I ended up losing my voice, literally losing my voice after a really bad criticism from him that really knocked the wind out of my sails.
Wow, that's quite a history too. I mean, that's quite something to have it move you to do the kind of work you're doing now. And I'm so glad you are, because what happened for you and your experience is something that so many people have the experience of. In some way or another, their voice gets silenced or quieted or somehow skewed. And we know, and I know you're fond of saying this, and it's something that's so important to me, is that words have energy. Words have not just a meaning, but words have the power to impact in huge ways. And that's why we're always trying to say something that's precise and that captures what we mean. And yet it's also something that can be used, as you already know and you've spoken to, as a weapon.
Yes. And my dad used his words. I don't think he purposely did it. He probably didn't even realize he was doing it. He was just reacting because it's a disease, right? PTSD. It is an unfortunate disease. And his words were so cutting that I ended up putting up like a shield, right? And I realized, many years later, many years of self-development and personal growth, that originally that shield was to protect me from his mean words. What I realized was I was actually keeping myself small by staying behind the shield. And it was, about age 40 that I decided it was time to come out from behind the shield. And that's when I really started doing a lot more of this work on my own. I'd been in senior HR roles for 20 years, working my way up from, the ground to a VP of a global talent management firm. But it was time to do something with my personal experience, because that's where the passion and the gusto comes from. I think you have that same experience as well. When you're passionate about something, it's because you've lived through it yourself, and you can hold someone else by the hand and say, here's the first steps to making some progress with this.
And there's a bigger picture there too that I'm hearing, which is, if we're to have a world that works, if we're to have a world that really brings forward the talent, the genius that is in people around us, they need to have a voice. And you're there out there encouraging that. So why do you think this is so important in today's world in particular?
Well, social media has it's been initially a really cool tool, and then I think it's in many cases, in many households, it's taken over. I mean, I look at the, when I took my son to the park. I mean, okay, he's special needs, so he doesn't have, as a 5-year-old, his own cell phone. But even you go to a restaurant and you look around and there's couples sitting there having dinner together and they're both on their cell phones and they're not even talking to each other. I think that our language and our words and our communication style even more important now, because we're getting only a quarter of the message if we only use emoticons and short little phrases and three-letter acronyms, and we're just missing the whole essence of powerful communications and relationship building. I think we need to come back to that. Just because we've got artificial intelligence now that can write things for us, I believe that our best messages, our most authentic, original messages, still need to be written by us. Sure, have AI do a little bit of research for us, but the words need to come in our voice, because only we can speak to the issues, the topics, the wisdom nuggets in a way that is going to land with our clients, because we know who our clients are and what they need.
So let's go into that. What is an empowering, what is an enriching conversation in your mind?
Well, it is collaborative. So if I think about the conversations that I have with my potential clients, just since we're on this call during the business day, a lot of times old sales techniques, they're teaching you to go in and say, well, tell me about your biggest challenge and what's keeping you up at night. Well, who wants to talk about that?
Certainly at the outset, because you don't even know who you're talking to, or you don't even maybe you haven't developed the relationship.
Exactly. So what I like to do instead is a process that I developed called ASK, which is appreciative sales kinetics. So it's using appreciative inquiry. First, we appreciate. So, I'd love to hear more about your business and you and your business. What's working really well? Well, everybody wants to talk about themselves.
Right.
So they share what's working really well, what they're excited about. You can feel it, you can hear it, you can taste it. And then I say, well, that sounds phenomenal. How could it be even better? What's happening in 2024 that would make it even better? And then there's a share of a future possibility. And sometimes what comes up is, this is actually getting in my way. This is something I need to look at, revamp, revise. And those questions that we would have wanted an answer to anyway, because we were curious, like what is keeping you up at night, they come out naturally, but it's not forced. And then I will share and say, that sounds really interesting. Can I share a little bit about what I do? Because I think we might be able to co-create together something that would help you get to your goals even faster. Now,
So you're
Laurie, no one ever
that
says no.
collaboration.
Yeah, we're talking about possibly co-creating a future. We haven't decided what that looks like. I'm not coming to the table and saying, well, here's my 6-step process that you need to do. It really is a collaborative dance. And that's what I think effective communications is. It's a collaborative dance, touching on how it feels, how it looks, what the results are, building trust, building relationship. It's all of those components. And I think we had a lot of those when we had our breakfast together initially and just connected, right? Because
exactly.
Resonance.
And when there's resonance, what we're talking about is not to bring too much of a scientific piece into it, but you're resonating at a certain dimension, at a certain frequency, and you do it through your words. You do it through the feeling tone in your body, but you do it through your words. And then if that's a match for that other person, if they're going, oh, maybe you even raise their frequency because you're approaching them with that particular appreciative inquiry.
Yeah.
And then they respond in kind. So then resonance gets created.
Yeah. Well, that's where the the appreciative sales, because that's the essence of this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the kinetics is that energy of reciprocity. Share a little bit. Can I share a little bit? How do we go forwards? How do we dance together, co-create? And you'll feel if what they're up to is something that is intriguing, it's fun, they sound like they're doing things that you would really enjoy collaborating with.
Right, that you want to be a part of.
That you want to be a part of. And hey, we're getting paid to do what we love. Even better, right? Just as we can have that positive spin when we have resonance in our language, our vibration. You've been to networking events. We all have. You put your hand out and you get this wet, fishy handshake back. It's like, oh, that does not resonate.
Yes.
Right?
Let me tell you about what I do so you can hire me.
Yes. Push, push, push. Well, I believe in today's world, it's more about pull. It's about an invitation. Do you want to come play? Let's play. If you don't, that's okay. There's lots of other ways that we can do business. It's not all about trying to nail something to the wall anymore. I don't think that old style works. I don't agree with that.
Do you see it still a lot in your world? Do you see people trying to do it that
way? I hear about it a lot more often from individuals who have taken, a specific sales training. Yes. And, there are some very specific techniques that work. Why not just have a collaborative conversation, though? It's so much simpler. You don't have to know a lot about the industry, about their specific product. They're telling you what excites them. They're telling you what's meaningful to them. And that's where you start. Instead of spending hours and hours going through a LinkedIn profile and trying to, come to the table with a prepared canned recipe. Who wants that, right?
Yes. So let's expand this. So you've been talking about it primarily in the sales process, but I know, and you certainly speak to this a lot, this is so important in life.
Yeah.
So think about the relationships that you have. Think about, and I'm saying this to you, our listeners, to our audience, think about the conversations that you have with the people that you care about. Well, and that might extend even to your boss, to your employee, to your kids, to your spouses, to your partner, to your best friend.
Yep.
So how do you open this up, what you're speaking to, for all the rest of the relationships in life?
Well,
It's a big ask of me.
I use quite a few tools to have the process be a little bit more predictable and yet still authentic. So you have a specific personality style. I have a particular personality style. And based on our values, we listen differently for different things. So if you and I both have high nurturing in our personality styles, so we're listening for the impact, the people side. How does this help with personal growth? How is this connecting to, bring science into the now and to make it something that's tangible and can really help people? Whereas if someone has more of a blueprint style personality and they're not nurturing like you and I, what they're interested in is the steps, the process, the systems, the box. They're very much playing inside the box, playing with the rules. So they listen for different things. And if you show up without a plan to those meetings, then they can very easily go sideways because it seems like you're disorganized. You don't have a plan. You don't have your briefcase, your agenda, and you better not be late.
So what if your best friend is a blueprint type person? How do you, and you're a nurturer.
Yeah.
How do you come together?
Yeah. Well, we all know, Laurie, as many of your audience knows, we can't change other people.
No.
You want something to change, we have to change, right? Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world. So it's about understanding and appreciating that person has a different communication style, different personality style, different values that they put first, and tailoring my conversation so that they hear me. Because if I'm talking about action, rah, rah, money, well, that's going to not be what they want to hear. and they're just going to switch off. So we haven't even got a chance to build a relationship because I was firing at them, which is what the action personality likes. There's four in total that I use in the system that I have come to know and embrace. And then the fourth one is knowledge, being primarily a knowledge-based person. So those are the people that you can't convince of anything. They want the facts, the data, the science. They'll take their time. I had a potential client who I discovered her personality style, so I knew there's no point in trying to rush anything through. She's going to want to call all my references, and it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks. And because I held space for her to do what she needed to do, we have a great relationship. And she's one of the clients who is more than willing to make referrals because she did due diligence. And now it's not about me coming to the table with a cookie cutter coaching program. It's about hearing, where is she at? What does she want to work on? How fast does she want to go? How willing is she to change? Not trying to, force fit something around because
I have this model and you're going to fit into it.
Yeah, I mean, the true essence of coaching, as you know, is about holding space for someone to step into and discover their best potential, their next step, not really about going through this paced goal. I mean, that's more like a course, right? Maybe it's self-paced, but if it's got an agenda that doesn't have the flexibility to see where the person really needs to go, I think that's not really the true essence of coaching. That's more like training.
And I suspect that even if you're in a training situation, you're bringing all of this, you have to be bringing all of this to bear. So
Me personally?
yeah, of course, because
Yes.
that's what you're doing and that's what you're teaching. So you're modeling what you're teaching.
Yes. I did a workshop, half-day workshop a couple of weeks ago for a mentoring group that at one point I was chair for that group. And then it's kind of gone full circle where the girl who was my protege became the mentor the next year, and then 2 or 3 years later she became the mentorship chair. So it's like gone full circle. I'm quite proud of how her journey evolved. And giving feedback to that group, and a lot of the comments were about the stories, because people love stories, they remember stories. As long as you're picking the right story to emphasize your point, it'll sink in much faster than just having bullet points on a whiteboard.
No, of course. We deal in stories, we live in stories. Yeah. So I want to shift a little to something that we both are very interested in, which is conscious leadership. And what do you think make up, either with some examples or just some ideas of what is conscious leadership? What makes up good conscious leadership, true conscious leadership?
Yeah. Well, for me, my definition is more around, are we bringing our full self to the table, and are we in an environment that respects and honors that and looks at what are we doing for the long term and how are we making the world a better place? Because I think that while we can have a socially conscious business model, there's far too many organizations that are still driven only by the numbers, and they're polluting the environment. They're hiring people at not fair wages. They're not paying women equal wages, and they could be doing such a better job. So I believe that every business can do both. They can be making money and they can be doing good. And the conscious leader is the one that takes a stand and says, this doesn't align with our values. And that mission statement on the wall, we say that we value our people. Well, why am I getting a text message at midnight from the CEO? That's not honoring our people. That's not respecting our people. And if that's the role modeling, to actually take a stand, be conscious about how it aligns or not, and take a stand to say, we actually need to shift this. Let's create a culture that is conscious. So we're doing things that are good for the environment. We're doing things that are supporting our clients and their needs, creating a healthy workplace, a safe workplace, and being leaders that really do look at not ways of bullying people or stealing their ideas and claiming them as our own. I mean, there's all sorts of things that contribute to poor leadership, but the conscious leader knows themselves really well, and then they bring out and foster everybody else learning how to bring their particular skills and abilities to the table. So they're really encouraging other people to be conscious too.
And how did we bring in those conscious conversations, that ability to be bold into the conscious leadership?
How do we bring them in? I think that circumstances very often are what drives these conversations, because usually it's a triggering event that happens that puts the spotlight on something that isn't working, or it's not supporting, it's not in alignment with the mission, it's not being conscious. And so at first point of any change is awareness. So once we've got that triggering event happening to put the spotlight on it, it's much easier than if it's a cultural issue to have a leadership conversation, because we can't sell leaders on things. They've got to know this is our priority and this is what's happening externally that's impacting our priority. You don't need to tell them there's this thing called COVID happening in the world, right? It's how do we embrace that, and how do we choose to work with it so that we are being conscious leaders ourselves and doing the right thing. It's not only about making money, but I think the triggering event puts the spotlight on it. Then we can come to the table and have a conversation about something we wanted to do anyway, instead of trying to work it from the bottom up through an organization and say, look, this is important, this is important, this is important. Yeah, well, our stock price is important. The shareholders are breathing down my neck. And until I see it as an issue and a priority, you're not going to get any time or dollars for it.
So, I mean, that what you bring up is, again, I'm relating to resonance. Like, how does that leader create a sense of resonance that elevates the whole conversation, that elevates the employees to want to be part of creating whatever solution there is?
Yeah. Well, I hope that I feel there's an energetic shift happening, and the tipping point is either just about there or we've just passed it. That there are more leaders who know that in order for them to lead others, they have to lead themselves first. So they're getting up at 5, they're doing their meditation, they're coming to the conversation. Before they get into their car and drive through traffic, they're already grounded for the day. So when things happen at work, they're not knocked sideways so much by those things, because they're fully grounded first. And when the leader of that team is talking about their daily practice, their daily ritual for being in touch with the universe, greater consciousness, however you label it, that rubs off on other people, because they see how this manager is treating them differently, how their ideas coming to the table are more about sustainability and more about the people and the impact, and not only about the bottom line. It's not, it's very short-sighted to only look at the next quarter. However, somebody's got to be monitoring the bean counting on a very minute basis.
Yeah, and there usually is.
Leader.
But it makes me think about innovation, which has always been such a passion of mine. And true innovation to me are those people that are able to take time to connect inside, to connect with that spirit, universal field, source, whatever we want to call it, because that's where those new ideas come in. And when they bring that kind of energy to the team, that's when other people start to feel inspired enough to bring true innovation to the table. Like, oh, we can actually do this. There's room for me to bring in what I might have called a silly idea, but maybe this is an idea that starts to spark other people, and we're off and running with a product that we end up with something that we end up bringing to the table as a product way down the road.
Yes.
But it starts with that ability to connect inside.
Yes. And I can't remember the study. It's actually quoted in my book. But it was talking about innovation power and how much lost innovation power there is. I mean, it's literally something like $2 or $3 trillion. It's a big number. And that innovation power is lost very often in organizations when the leader isn't conscious, is being very command and control focused. So they don't engage their team, and an employee who's not engaged is just more often than not just showing up and doing the work. They're not going to bring their best ideas forward to somebody else if they're not proud of the company that they work for, if they don't understand how their little cog connects to the bigger cog that serves the customers, if they don't have, in Daniel Pink, he wrote that book, The Surprising Truth About What Really Motivates Us. And he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So yes, we have to give our team autonomy, let them run with something, give them a chance to show their creativity and bring their brilliance to the table and use their own resources and show what they've got for new ideas. Then mastery, I mean, everyone wants to be the go-to person on some subject, be subject matter expert. And then the purpose part is about that connection. So, day one, if your orientation to a new firm includes going out and actually meeting a customer and seeing the impact of whatever it is the company is building or providing as a service, make that connection much more quickly about how when you do a great job and you look after your customers, the customers will look after bringing you in more business, and that looks after the bottom line.
I love the ecosystem you've created.
It's not me creating it.
I know, but what I mean is you've created it right now for us in words.
Okay. Yes. True. And talking about innovation, I mean, if we look at even two words, right? These are, again, the words referenced in the book there, that are, more of the unisex concepts. The word should versus the word could, right? Has very different energy. When we should, you should do this and you should do that and you should have done it this way and I should do this. It has that heaviness, that tone of obligation to it. Whereas if it's about could, sounds very similar, and yet that has lightness and airiness and possibility, and it's juicy. So I encourage you to be aware, how often do I use the word should? And can you switch it up? And if you did use could instead, what's possible? How would you feel about what you're creating?
Exactly. And we know we do that in our own thoughts. When I should myself, you should have done it this way, I shrink.
I know.
And I'm reminded again of what you spoke about your father, that feeling of shrinking back and hiding behind. But when I say, oh, you could do this to myself, when I have that inner dialogue that talks about what I could do, it opens doors to say, let me play, let me experiment, let me try out some things. And what it's done is it's taken us beyond what we know, which is the should, into the possibility, into what we haven't yet experienced or haven't yet tapped into.
Right. And then when we put that possibility question out to greater consciousness.
Exactly.
We have the collective of all of those brilliant ideas that are so much bigger than we could have created by ourselves flooding through.
Exactly. So we open those doors. And, I know that our audience here is after that, is after those, not only those big ideas, but the capacity to open those doors.
Right.
To be able to receive not just what they already know, but the more. Yeah.
So there's a few other, really classic words that I talk about, no, right? I mean, no is like a dead end. Where do you go when someone says no? And do you say no to people very often and not give them a way out?
Right.
Right. And so, that's going to stop the conversation in its tracks.
Mhm.
um,
You and I had a conversation like that,
we
and
did.
I said no to you, and I don't even remember what it was about because it's years ago. And you kind of stopped and you went like, "What?" And you absolutely called me out on it. And in your own way, and it was like, oh my goodness, I heard myself, and I felt the energy of it, and it was a powerful moment of there's no reason for me to have said no. It was like a habit, and I don't ever want to treat anybody out of habit
Hmm.
or respond to someone that way.
Well, that movie, Yes Man, um, is a hilarious example of the opposite, right? What happens when
Right.
we say yes to everything? Jim Carrey, great movie.
Hmm.
Uh, and there are things that we can do with no and yes, but I think if we always come to the conversation with a what, a who, a how, a where, um, something that's open-ended question that doesn't give a chance for someone to just say yes or no, because
Hmm.
where do you go with that, right?
Right.
I was said to my dad, because he was so critical, I could do this or I could do this, and I gave him a choice of two, because that way I had a 50% chance I was going to get something. Otherwise, if I'd have said, can I do this? As soon as I asked permission, I gave away my power. So I
Um,
went to the other extreme and started being this wild, crazy, adventurous, rebellious person, because I didn't want to be put in a box. And so I would just not ask. And if I needed to afterwards, I would ask for forgiveness, but don't ask for permission, because whenever we do that, we're just giving away our power.
hmm hmm And before we started this conversation, you were talking a little bit about something that, and I know this will be published a few months after we're having it, but you had written an article about um, not wanting what you don't want to tolerate anymore in life
Right.
and stepping away instead of tolerating.
Yes.
You want to speak to that a little bit? Because it feels like it
Yeah.
connects with this.
It's the article is called "We Get What We Tolerate," right?
Mm.
Um, so again, I'm very much, Laurie, as you know, about leveraging my own experiences. And if I can go through something and come out the other side of the wind tunnel and then help someone else come through it,
Hmm.
because I understand it and I get it and I've been there and I've done it, I think that's the essence of authenticity.
Hmm.
Um, but really, that was about the journey over the last 6 months of my life, of having some surgery and then recognizing that my husband and I were on different paths. And I had been tolerating by not speaking up.
Hmm.
It seemed like, oh, well, if she's not saying anything, it must be still okay.
Hmm. Sure.
Well, I hadn't spoken up because I was trying to put the words together, because it felt actually like kind of like a toxic, box jellyfish wrapped around my neck,
Hmm.
with some of the behavior that was going on. And as I shared in the article, when, disrespect, honor, those kind of elements are not in a relationship, it's really hard for it to flourish.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was basically inviting some of the readers to go through a 3-step process. Like, if this sounds like you, here's 3 simple steps that you can take and what to do to get at least the awareness about whether you want to make change or not. And then if you're going to make the change, you own it and you make the change. You choose what you want to do. Because as soon as you put your hand up and say, no, that's not acceptable, that's disrespectful, that's not appreciating who I am, that's not the kind of culture I want to show our children as a happy home.
Right.
As soon as you take a stand and say, that's not working for me, then something shifts.
Hmm. Hmm.
But if we just stay silent, nothing's going to change. There is no
Right.
change. There is no
Right.
change.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Can you say what those 3 steps in a simple 1, 2, 3?
It's about the word you, right? So first was about your awareness.
Hmm.
Secondly was about creating space, I don't have the article in front of me, but
Okay.
secondly, it's about creating space to look at different opportunities. And then the third piece is about taking action, about being understanding and compassionate with yourself
Mm-hmm.
about what's been happening and choosing what you're going to do about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
You
important.
have to read the article. It's on my LinkedIn profile.
Actually, if you send me the link to the article, I will add it to the show notes.
Even better, I can do that too.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Yvonne. You've just given so many different things today that invite introspection, invite wanting to do something differently, invite curiosity, and I really appreciate that because that's what we're here for.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Laurie, for the invitation. I think the work that you do, the wisdom work, is so powerful. And when we're tapping into the vibrations, the inner whispers,
Mhm.
taking steps, doesn't always seem like it makes sense. But even if you trust your soul is calling
Mhm.
you forward in the right direction, it'll happen. I mean, I did get another message 4 years ago saying, leave your husband. And I didn't act on it. And it
Yes.
was like this booming voice
Mhm.
I was so stunned. I wasn't ready to take action on it then.
Exactly. And I
Um,
remember that same experience. And you do it when you do it.
yeah,
Action is needed. And
yeah.
action just also shows the universe, oh, yeah, I'm listening.
I'm listening and I'm ready to step forward. Yeah.
Mhm.
Universe loves action, right?
Well, thank you again, Yvonne Silver, for all of your work in the world. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laurie. And I look forward to our continued conversations, whatever those might be.
Absolutely. And boldness in our conversations.
Yes. Take action, take a stand, do not tolerate.
And thank you to you, our audience, for being with us here today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Join us here regularly for more discovery, wisdom, and illumination. And if you have enjoyed today, we really ask you strongly to leave us a review because when you do, that helps other people find this kind of wisdom, this kind of illumination for themselves. And frankly, my belief is that it helps transform the world. So for you, your own personal self, if you want to find out more about your own quantum connection with your inner guidance, take the quantum connection quiz now. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.